Hi, everyone. Ronald Ingram here, your Rebel Banker Futurist, broadcasting live on X, YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook right now from the Nevada high desert looking down on the Luxor Pyramid. Greetings on Memorial Day. This isn't a day off. This is a day for memory. Memory of the battle for freedom that seems perpetual and which we carry on here as a core part of our mission to ensure preservation and restoration of private property rights, which requires a fair, secure, and private banking system. Crypto is perhaps the greatest innovation in freedom the world has ever seen. Just ask Iran. The people there, many of them very well educated and savvy, were well prepared, some of them, for the unfortunate events of the war, and they went in a situation where their fiat currency went to zero. Many of them had Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies, and that was their ticket, if you will, for some manner of financial stability in the midst of the chaos. Since I'm on some new channels for the first time, I'm going to explain some things about this revolutionary new digital asset class known as POCK. It is a token or coin. Yes, you can use the words coin and token interchangeably. The differentiation is not material for this coin. It is a meme coin like Doge, and it is a fungible asset or coin like Bitcoin, and it is the payment gateway for a desperately needed alternative to traditional credit scoring. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about just one of the aspects to this score, to this platform that make us so unique. But first, I want to say, before I get into those details, I just want to. I've found recently that nothing really speaks better to what SPOCK is than to show a little bit about where we've come from and where we're at right now. So this shows you just over the last 30 days where we're at in terms of return. This chart shows 15,541% increase in just over 30 days. So that kind of speaks for itself in a way. For a lot of people, I found that by just showing this chart, then it certainly gets their interest and for us to explain. And this is extraordinary. This really is extraordinary. You hear about things like this, but here we are. And so congratulations to the folks that have been here since the beginning. Many of them have seen this percentage return in their wallet. And I'm going to read this testimonial again from an executive at SoFi. And this is what he said about when I just started to introduce this project SPOCK on LinkedIn. And it's still very early for everyone, really. I consider everything that we've done so far to be pre-launch. The real launch happens July 24th, 2026, when we introduce the face of all of this technology, the interaction layer called BROK. But here's something that just helps, I think, want to get this through to people. So this is what an executive said about his experience buying around 30 days ago. So he says, Ron has developed something special. When he told me about his new SPOCK coin, I immediately purchased 1.73 million coin for $100. 30 days later, I'm up 14,113%. No joke. Ron turned my $100 investment into $12,300. I bought more a week ago, and that transaction is up 10%. don't wait too long. So between this chart and that testimonial, this is factual. This is data. This is not forward-looking. This is just looking at the historical, which is not necessarily indicative of the future, but it is very significant. A couple of other things that I've found are really impactful when I share them. I guess we're often reluctant to brag, but I have to say that this is just a fact. I am the first banker and dev to be fully doxed and launch a crypto. So I'm the first fully doxed dev, banker, futurist, only futurist that owns a bank, and only banker that owns a bank to launch a cryptocurrency. And why? Well, I had an interest for a long time, but it's only been the convergence of events that we've talked about, the convergence of it, the starting with the Genius Act and even going prior to the Genius Act, executive orders promulgated by the president, then the CFTC, SEC guidance that provided clarity on what a digital asset is and that it is not deemed a security under the SEC and the CFTC. This memo was released on that guidance came out on on March 27th. This memo that I just held up, that came out in April 28th. Then we have the first crypto enthusiast, Kevin Warsh, incoming federal chairman. So the first chairman of the Federal Reserve, who is obviously, I say obviously, his own personal holdings include 30 cryptos. So that would tend to indicate, maybe not obvious, but it would tend to indicate that he is a crypto supporter. And he has said as much. Obviously, Trump is a crypto enthusiast and his whole family. So we've got some pretty strong, a pretty strong push. And so March 17th in particular, that was a turning point for me. And I launched this first publicly available crypto for me. I mean, I had a couple of smaller, they weren't private, but I had a couple of smaller experiments years back to learn and understand what I recognized then was going to be something quite profound. But it wasn't until March 17th that I felt comfortable putting my name on a project as a banker. Okay. So I think I think that worth mentioning. Apparently that has an impact on people. That chart showing tremendous returns. My friend who at SoFi, who turned a $100 investment into $12,300 in around a 30-day period. That chart, my background, my track record as a banker, as a serial entrepreneur in neobanking, coining the word neobank, author of a book on neobanking, and a faculty member of the Bankers Institute, the largest educational organization for bankers with 1,800 financial institutions as members, large and small, right? So those things, I guess, are quite significant. And the team that I'm putting together and have put together, we're at about 13 FTEP, which is my metric for human equivalency. Output maybe higher than 13. Actually, I think I'm going to revise that upwards. Today, my team and our development went up tremendously. When I put out that date, July 24th, 2026, I gotta be, I put my name on that date, and we're going to launch BROK, which is the base of this whole stack that I'm going to talk about, by that date. And there's still a lot of development to do. It seemed like it was manageable, but now I'm very confident. Just at the, I've accelerated to at least 15 FTEP and getting faster and faster, as I said I would, and it's happening. So I'm very, very pleased with that. So this is another thing that you really have to get your head around. This is not a short-term project. This is this is based on a patent from 2013, and then that's an issued patent, a very valuable patent that relates to the score, which I'm going to talk a little bit more today about, because that's so important. It's such an obvious burning issue in the whole global financial system in every nation around the world. It's always been central to banking, and it right now is extremely problematic. I figured out a solution in 2013, and then have since expanded that with 4 additional provisional patents. So we are expanding and extending and have a very, very strong foundation. So tell me one other meme coin that has a team like this, with experience like this, with development experience. I've launched over 10 million, onboarded over 10 million individual accounts over the last 15 or 20 years in terms of mobile banking apps and debit cards and prepaid cards. So we know how to onboard people. We know how to create the right user experience. And frankly, that's been one of the big things that's been lacking, and that I've seen firsthand as we've launched this project, where many people that know me have decided that like me, they are ready to take the leap into crypto, and maybe not by creating their own token yet, but by investing in our digital asset. And so many people for the first time are getting their first wallets and funding those wallets. And I'm seeing the difficulty that it's amazing that we're at the market cap that we're at, over 5 million, up to 7 million at one point for briefly, and we're ranging around 6 million market cap for the last few days. We want to get to 12 million before the end of the month. Yeah, that's still on. So, but the challenge has been many people that everyone that I know have resources, disposable liquid resources to put into something like this, and significant amounts, but they are constrained, and throttled by the legacy establishment, legacy banking systems and intermediaries, so that to the extent that they're often only able to put in $500, and then at present, and it seems like it's been getting worse, not better. They're unable to put more than, say, $500 a week. People who are ready to put in thousands of dollars horrible for the project. You can't, horrible for any stockholder, really. But the good news is that these people believe this actually gave them even more, because these people were even more incensed and more motivated, I think, to persist with investing in SPOC and participating in this project, because it validates everything that I've been saying is true, that private property rights are under threat, that our freedoms are being constrained and have been being eroded on the financial front for far too long, for 95 years at least. And since the formation of the Bank of International Settlements in Switzerland, which they call the High Table, which only 6 countries have permanent seats at that table, and for a total board of 18 nations, including the US only in 1994. And starting with the Bank of England and Belgium and Germany and Italy and 6 developed countries and up to 18 but 6 permanent members, and these are the guys that control, and they're all guys that control the world of finance globally. They control all the central banks. So people complain about the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve is not in charge. The Federal Reserve is taking their direction. Yes, technically, they don't have a duty to the BIS, the high table, doesn't put out edicts, public edicts that, well, actually they kind of do. They're directive, but not laws, because they're really kind of above all the laws. What jurisdiction, what law applies to the high table? I'm unaware of. There's 63 nations that own this entity, which is a private corporation. So anyway, it's something that I'll talk about more freely now that Kevin Warsh is in place, because I think that that's one of the most optimistic things that I've seen and more important, I think, than many people realize for this nation. So the key thing that came out of March 17th and then the April 28th memo, and then is getting more clear with Warsh and with further executive orders, is that certain assets, digital assets, have actually even been named, and they cover a very nice broad spectrum, everything from a pure meme coin like Doge to Bitcoin, of course, and Ethereum and many others. So now it's just really clear that where SPOCK fits into the spectrum of digital commodities. And we can say with meme, we call this a meme plus utility coin, which is explanatory, but it is not definitive. Definitively, it is a digital asset. We still talk about meme and utility because that's a very special, smart thing, I think, that we did. We used intentionally. Some people say, why did you use Pump Fun for a serious project like this? Well, it's serious and fun. It's possible for both things to be true. A lot of the best brands have an element, they have to be culturally engaging, and fun is a good way of doing that. And this is more than just fun. I love everything that SPOCK represents in terms of logic, in terms of super intelligence and exploration, and sort of a utopian future of exploration and endless curiosity. That's what drives me, and that is a healthy, good thing, to have curiosity and to be explorers. That's one of the most admirable things about the human race. So we have a big vision, a big mission. It really is nothing less than inverting the banking system, inverting that high table so that everyone has a seat there. And that sounds like an impossible task, perhaps. It is inevitable and achievable. I say that because crypto is now past the tipping point. It's past that, what we often refer to as the VisiCalc moment, that moment where PCs went from entertainment and fun and hobbyist uses to every single business in the world having to have one. And what was that? What was the triggering moment? It was the introduction of VisiCalc and the Excel spreadsheets, or Excel and Lotus 123, which is precursor, I think, to Excel. So the spreadsheets, when the spreadsheets started, and then businesses could see the utility, and then we had accounting software and many more, and many things came after that. But that was the tipping point where it went from something that was a hobby to something that was serious business for every business in the world. That's the point that we're at with crypto. And why? Because there are issues that just can no longer, have become intolerable for many people, and in the current banking system as it exists. And there are only Banking seems incredibly complex, perhaps, but it's laid out in my book, Neobank, Navigating the Future of Banking. And I talk in there that there are really only four fundamental things to banking. Number one, transacting. Number two, borrowing. Number three, lending. Number four, trust. So with NeoScore, that's the alternative credit scoring system, alternative to credit scoring, or alternative credit scoring system that replaces or complements traditional credit scoring systems. It gives data power, the power of the data and the ownership of the data back to the people. It's portable. It can, because the individual owns it. If the individual moves from one country to another, they could bring that data with them and make it available. Such a simple thing, right? It seems kind of common sense, but it hasn't been that way. You could have a perfect score in London and come and be a high paid executive and come to New York and have to pay everything cash and have zero credit because your credit, and you can't call the credit, you can't call, even though it's the same company, you can't call the head office in London. You can't call Equifax in London and say, hey, send my file to America, to the head office in New York. You can't do that. Ridiculous, I know, but it's a huge flaw in the system. On top of all the obvious ones, just the legacy infrastructure in terms of agreements and contracts and compensation and data flows, the way the data, all of these, in some cases, manual sources of data, CSV, comma delimited files being manually uploaded by secure FTP and just, it's cumbersome and it's inaccurate. And when these inaccuracies show up, they are impactful and it causes serious issues for people that need money for basic essentials in some cases, or for homes, for the biggest transaction in many people's lives. And they're all trapped by this score that lives in a black box that's only started to become transparent as more people have analyzed it and more information has been leaked out. More information is provided about how to build your score and how that score is calculated and so forth. So I had the good fortune and part of the inspiration behind this project was I developed loan products for financial institutions. And I had the unique opportunity early on. There was a lot of debate in one organization that I worked for, whether credit scores, the traditional credit score, was relevant to thin file or no file customers. That's somebody that maybe a new immigrant, a legal immigrant that has come here legally and lawfully, but still they don't have their score doesn't follow them, or they didn't have a score. And so that's a no file situation. Others have, someone that's just a recent college grad getting their first credit card. You have to start somewhere. When you start with a thin file. It means very little data is in that file. And so there's some debate going on that maybe those people are fresh, clean, and maybe a credit score won't be that predictive of how that loan is going to perform. And so a number of questions like that were tossed around, and I had the opportunity to have a team of analysts, use the latest. I was already an enthusiast of my history in AI goes back over 20 years. I launched my first conversational agent that was able to carry on conversations worldwide, 24/7, 365 days a year, 120 different languages. So I was I've always been fascinated with artificial intelligence, even as a kid with robots, right? So, and Star Trek and the computer on Star Trek and all of that just fascinated me. So I used what was the latest tools at the time: genetic algorithms, neural networks, which are now commonplace for fraud scoring and anti-money laundering, and used all these tools. Had CFAs and PhD level analysts doing deep dives to see we would actually intentionally do loans even if we knew that the score probably, that they probably wouldn't qualify, because we wanted to see how they performed and whether the scores were predictive or not. And so I boiled things down to the point where there were 5 or 6 elements that, and of course, the most important one is missing. I'll get to that in a second. But in terms of the data that were available, there were only 5 or 6 key essential things that determined how well a loan would perform. The first one, I'll tell you, I won't go through them all today, but the first one was just the ID verification process. Obviously, if they don't have good ID verification, that's where most fraud happens. That's where most loans go bad, is the first payment doesn't even go through because the borrower never had any intention of making a payment in the first place. And so better ID verification, not just my score, I'll get to it. My score is calibrated to identify that particular issue very well, and the other issues. But so all of that, and then I found it quite amusing. Originally, neobanks, a term that I coined, was intended to focus on peer-to-peer lending, like Zopa and Prosper and Lending Club and others that came out in Zopa came out in 2005, I think, and I'd been already come up with this concept before anyone had launched this, and therefore my model is still unique. It hasn't been implemented the way I envisioned. Instead, what all of these, although those 3 anyway, and most of the peer-to-peer lending companies, they tried to reinvent the credit score, is what they, I don't know if that's what they set out to do, but they had a big part of their cost was on data analysis. And that sounds smart, right? That would fly with most Wall Street analysts, that this new startup that's creating this new lending model. It wasn't that terribly new, not anywhere near what I had envisioned, which is true peer-to-peer lending. But they would price the risk for people that would more or less invest into this pool, and it wasn't true peer-to-peer, and they had these different pools, and they had a whole team of PhDs crunching the numbers to try to get fine-tune the score to predict the risk. But all they were doing, they were using the same inputs that like FICO has probably 1,000 PhDs, or did at one time, working on how to predict who's going to pay and who's not going to pay, and all the different possible inputs into a credit score. And they were trying to replicate that with a dozen people. And actually they were just adding noise. And you're layering too much weighting on the credit score. So credit today is usually based on 4 things, but the best lenders in the world, and I've spoken about this before, I worked for one of them, one of the top banks in the world, not in size, it was probably in the top 100 in size, and but a very storied older bank that had been a pioneer in all forms of lending. But their original lending model, which they kept to and still taught and still teach to this day, it was based on the 5 C's of credit. In this order: number 1, character. That's which is missing. And number 2, credit. Number 3, capacity, very important. Most of your credit cards and everything just based on those 2. Then capital, which is kind of the measure of success that you've had in the past in terms of assets accumulated, which has some value. And collateral, which many think is the most important thing, which it is not. Now, collateralized loans for mortgages and things like that just makes sense, and that's but in terms of predicting whether a person is going to pay or not, collateral is not your best predictor. If you could ascertain character, and so that was the genesis of the NEO score, was looking at how the old axiom, it's not what you know, it's who you know, right? Well, there's some truth to that in a fair manner, and just a common sense manner anyway. That the people that you associate with does matter, and but not to say that it's not class based or anything like that. It's like you could have any group of people that would speak highly about people in that group, even though the whole group might not be thought of highly by another group, say by education or something like that. Maybe people, at Harvard think that everybody at Yale is a retrobate, or it has to be this kind of college instead of that kind of college or whatever, right? Or this state or that state, right? So these are affiliate groups, and so people within one college might want to lend to people within that college because they have that, or within a fraternity or within a family even, right? There you have these connections that really are predictive. So I have a patented algorithm and a whole schema around the NEO score, which I've extended to include machines now. So this is one of the big things that everyone is going to start becoming aware of, and some are starting to talk about it already. It's fairly, I would think, obvious that you can't just trust a machine. Yes, a machine may be able to spot a scammer or a bad deal or flaws in a contract or all kinds of things that very instantly, but they can still be deceived. But the main thing is to determine at least that they're benign versus malign, right? That's the baseline. So because there already are agents in the employ of bad actors who are using the agents just like the good actors with benign intent are using AI to amplify their creative abilities and innovative capabilities and for good purposes and at least well-intended purposes. There's the other side of that spectrum as well. So you could have and will have machines that are being used by rogue states and bad actors out there. And so the score, the NEO score, I extended that patent to enhanced it to include machines now. Furthermore, the SPOCK, and it just made sense because the SPOCK token was designed from the get-go to facilitate machine-to-machine transactions. So now back to those 4 pillars again. Transacting, right? Since the beginning of time, whether it was salt or seashells or notches on sticks or gold bullion or gold and silver coins or paper money or all of these different currencies that we've had throughout time, there are certain qualities that make some things better than others, and over time those change. Fungibility is one kind of neat word, right, that we talk a lot about, and that's just the ability for the currency to be converted into one form or another and to be easily tradable, right? So Bitcoin, Litecoin, Ethereum, all have differing degrees of fungibility and ease of use and so forth. SPOCK is designed to be like Bitcoin, scarce, it's a limited supply, and it is designed for utility not only between humans, but between human and machine to human and machine to machine. So it was built with the MBC 20 protocol and the X402 protocol, which is something that was built into the internet from its inception, which facilitates transactions for microtransactions right now is what Coinbase and Brian Armstrong is leading the charge for. However, I see even a potential beyond that, which is baked into the parts that can. Obviously, X402 has been around for 30 plus years, so that's not patentable, and that is an open standard that's accessible to everyone. But we built our systems to utilize that infrastructure, so that tremendously increases the utility. Again, utility just means how useful it is, right? So this is not just a pretty face. SPOCK is culturally iconographic and fun and all of those things that make it catchy and great for marketing and for branding and for it to engage people. And it did exactly as it was intended to do. It got a lot of attention, and it has a lot of attention on Pump Fund, which is the largest marketplace for meme coins. So it just made sense to dial into that. And artists always do that. They dial into they are less judgmental about they say, oh, that's just for meme coins. That's just for fun. That's not serious business. Well, a lot of serious tokens have come out from that. And I think more will, and we are coming out of that platform, off that platform into this space. And Solana is the perfect network because of the speed and the low cost of transactions. It will work for X402 transactions. So all of this, we have all of this going for us. So I'm just talking about that layer number one, transacting. Transacting also has to do, it could be domestic, it could be international. It's a value exchange. So SPOCK is already set for all of those things. It could be used for settlement. You might ask why, maybe it wouldn't, but if the whole picture comes together, it would be used for that too, and you'll see why. Because the next two components, borrowing and lending. Now, I just explained how that is not as complicated as you would think. And so I built BROK knowing what I know about lending and building loan products that work. And it's easy to lend money, they always say, but it's hard, it's more difficult to collect. So based on the knowledge and past research that I've done, the borrowing and lending side is not as hard as one would think. The hardest part is the regulatory side. And if you read the Interstellar, my article on the Interstellar Bank, which has a number of my patented elements in it, we have that identified and a solution for that as well. And the complicated part of well, it's not really that complicated. The important part of borrowing and lending is simply you need a basic contract. Some of these contracts are ridiculous. Like I think of your mortgage contract, who can even read that? It's crazy. And most loan agreements are like that. Funny story, my first loan product that I developed, I actually used that exact thing to create a very successful loan product. I spent, based on the research that I'd done and ruminating on it, I thought, we don't really need all of the data that we're asking for. There's really only, we need to make sure that we've got the right person. The person is who they say they are, which my NeoScore does, and in a related patent, SITVIS, secure identity, trust, and verification system that is I've even proposed for military uses and agency use and so forth, to make really certain using all the latest tools to ensure that a person is who they say they are. So really rigorously testing that. First point is very important. Who you let into that trusted circle. So that's the transaction layer, needs to be secured, and the borrowing and lending piece. So the borrowing and lending piece isn't as complicated as people think. And so that was how I came up with, that's why I was not intimidated at all to create BROK, the genius super robo banker, artificial intelligence agent, because I realized how to what degree lending can be simplified, especially with the Ingram evaluation matrix, which is I've talked about that at length in other calls. That's the brain for the brain, right? That is the prefrontal cortex, or the corpus callosum for the rest of the gray matter, that divides and analyzes and provides the logic that is explainable, can be articulated, like your verbal center of your brain can be articulated. So AI can articulate in terms that a human can understand, an explainable basis for a loan decision, let's say. So then the important factors really just come down to the pricing, how much you're going to borrow, how much you want to lend, how much you want to borrow, and what the terms are, what the rates are, what the payment amount is that you can afford, based on one of the ratios that is important is a total debt service ratio. So that just looks at how much, and your debt service ratio just looks at how much money you have to service the debt obviously that is capacity, and that is one of the 5 C's of credit, which are character, credit, character, credit, capacity, capital, and collateral. So the borrowing and lending piece of it, BROK makes that really easy. So now a banker or you as an individual, any individual can say, can ask, say, what's the best way? We have a deficit. Our car needs to be repaired, and we need our car to get to work. And BROK would ask you, well, how much do you need? And maybe you think you need 1,500, maybe it's only 1,200. BROK shops around for you, and so you get it down to 1,200, and then you think, oh, I'm going to put it on my credit card, but BROK would say, no, that's you get a term loan that would be lower interest rate and not lock you into an endless cycle of debt. And so it'll be like a 2-year loan, and you get it paid off right away. So wise decisions that if you had a private banker advising you all the time, you would be way farther ahead in life from every financial decision that you make compounds over time. So to have this really smart advice early on would change your life, would change the life of everyone in your family if they had that additional point. We'll call it an additional point. It could in the future, regulations permitting, be the only point, be the primary point. But for now, with regulations as they are, there is no certification there. So this would be a educational tool more than a certifiable expert CPA or mortgage lender, which requires certain qualifications, right? So it wouldn't have any of those licensing necessarily, because I don't think, although it could pass the tests, we're not quite there yet with society to have artificial intelligence agents passing the bar or things like that quite yet. On the legal side, and this is not legal advice, and I'm not a certified investment advisor either. So there's my disclaimer. So the borrowing and lending, and then the fourth part is trust. And we've already talked about key part of the trust. We've already talked about NeoScore. Of course, that would be the key part of the trust. Is the person who they say they are? What's their track record? What do people who have done business with this person say about this person? And the algorithm mines that data with your permission, and the information that's gleaned is shared with your permission as the owner of the data, right? So it's not like so it is a fair and open system that encourages merit versus demerit, right? So BROK is the face of these tools, the Ingram evaluation matrix for making decisions, explainable artificial intelligence decisions, which is all the experts, I think, agree on this one point, that is a key issue right now. Regulators expect it, according to FDIC guidance, and it's a very important thing, which is very solvable in a robust, useful, practical way with the Ingram evaluation matrix. And so there you have it. You've got transactions. You've got the ability to do transactions with a currency that's, or not a currency, but a value exchange mechanism, let's call POCK that, a digital asset, a digital commodity that can be used for value exchange, for payments related to this system, which is capable of encompassing all banking requirements. Not talking about the regulatory side. We're just going to leave that aside. And there's a strategy for that is mentioned in my article that I linked today to one of my comments, but you can search on it through my articles. It's pretty easy to find, or just ask please comment, please ask questions. I'll answer one question that came up. Somebody asked me, so I've mentioned that I have a number of meetings coming up this week that will add new wallets to SPOCK. So we'll have new investors, new investors that I know. Just there, of course, I know only a tiny fraction of all the people around the world that have invested in SPOCK so far in SPOCK tokens as a digital asset. So there's, I'm sure, many more out there, but there, people that I know of, there are 9 whales that I'll be talking to this week that will be opening wallets. And so far and how do I say that with confidence? Well, so far my record is 10 for 10, maybe 8 for 10, with 2 being in progress and yeses, but just not having transacted yet. So those, so somebody asked me, what do I mean by a whale? That's a good question. I think a lot of people, that is thrown around a lot, and see all the graphics, when we get a big buyer, there's on Telegram, it's really cool. You see instead of a ticker, you see every time there's a significant purchase, you see in real time, you see that purchase of SPOCK flagged, right? Hundreds of dollars to thousands of dollars. And that's pretty cool. And when they're in the thousands of dollars, you have to see this whale, right? So we all know what a whale is, a big mammal, right? In this case, a big investor with a lot of capital. And in my mind, a whale is someone that has the capacity to write $100,000 check or more at any given time. Now, and their total and their net worth is probably over 10 million. That would be how I would, the baseline for metric for a whale for me. And so we've got, so I personally know of plenty in the system, but I think most people, when they say whales, they're talking about crypto whales. None of the whales that I know are crypto whales. They are maybe, yeah, a couple, but they're not even on board yet. I haven't even reached out to them, actually, come to think of it. So I've had my hands full, and I really love this idea, and it's part of the mission is to get people, because crypto is coming. Trump said that, and Warsh maybe as well, that they recognize that the current financial system is deeply flawed. SWIFT, the Society for Worldwide International Financial Transactions, is incredibly slow, expensive, all kinds of unknown intermediaries involved. In some cases, it's 1-to-1. In some cases, there may be 3 or 4 hops before the funds get from the place where it's sent to, and you never even have certainty about what the final payment is going to be on the other end. And then at the retail side, you have Western Union and MoneyGram, extremely expensive for people that are doing, small wires to internationally, because how else do you move money internationally legally? And there are ways, but there are, that's one of the main mechanisms, incredibly expensive and highly regulated and inefficient. So with clearing times even domestically, it's not that great. Getting better. You can do there's lots of same day, very quick methods of transacting. Fedwire and so forth have really come a long ways. But still, you're only as strong as your weakest link. And so you've got many financial institutions that aren't directly plugged in. They have a correspondent banking relationship. There's this whole daisy chain of banks and financial institutions and intermediaries that it's just a very kludgy, inefficient system that can be completely replaced with any of the newbies that have had experience with a wallet now, they're just amazed at how quickly and easily a value transfer can be accomplished, for one thing. So if therefore BROK is able to enable for banks or for businesses or even for individuals, say you wanted loans between friends and family, for example, or beyond, if BROK will be able to provide the contract to make it a template contract for appropriate to whatever state, and I'll have a disclaimer on there to run it by a real lawyer. It will have, I even had a system we made at scale. We could do this is have a lawyer in the loop, just one lawyer, and a lawyer in the loop to manage the system systemically. I developed something like that for a financial institution already. So that's something that could be done at the neobanks level as well. So you can see that we've got all the pieces for a global to invert the global banking system. So all of this aside, I'm a pragmatist, and before I say I'm a pragmatist, let me say it's also practical to believe that a small group of people can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. I think I just quoted Margaret Mead there. I did. Famous quote by Margaret Mead, the feminist, a community organizer that had a big impact on the world. All it takes is a small group of determined individuals that quickly can have a ripple effect that extends to the furthest corners of the world. And that's what we want to do. We want every human and AI agent to have a seat at a high table, at the high table. So invert the system, which was never even feasible before, but it is now with the artificial intelligence systems that we have, with that BROK is orchestrating, and about 9 different agents, all connected in a flexible, non-hierarchical, semi-hierarchical system, because you have to have some degree of hierarchy in highly regulated industries. So there's some degree of hierarchy, but I refer to BROK actually as an acronym for Bankers Revolutionary Operations Keiritsu, which is co-opetition. And for all the banks, financial entities that want to participate in this system. So, and again, just reminding everyone the purpose, the practical, so that's a very, very big vision. So even the tens of thousands of percentage returns that people have had so far, and our goal is our goal. I can't say I can't predict the future legally, so I can't make any forward-looking statements. But I can say what our goal is. Our goal is to get this to 12 million by the end of the month, 100 million by July. That's market cap. And 10x that by July 24th, and then our ultimate goal, not our ultimate goal, but the next goal after that is $1 per SPOC, and that is if the whole vision that I'm talking about is achieved, that's not hard to imagine at all, is it? And as a pragmatist, though, I'll say that there's more than one path, right? With all of these patents, there are licensing opportunities. I'm not a patent troll. I will cooperate with other parties that want to utilize the concepts and technology that can be leveraged, and will be fair, and that's and so then they can have the benefit of patent protections that I have, less legal liability, and greater speed to market. So activism is one of the reasons to buy SPOCK. The return on investment is a reason to buy SPOCK, although I am obliged to say that this is digital assets. Crypto is, as an asset class, is deemed to be very high risk and volatile. So be aware of that, and only invest what you can afford to lose. And I think we can say invest now, because we're referring to this as a digital commodity or digital asset, and you can invest in assets. So, and the main thing really is, at the very least, or at the very least, is education. And the only way to become familiarized, and I'm really talking to the bankers out there, your customers are all over this, and they're going to leave your bank if you don't open the door to crypto in a judicious, careful way, through licensing. There's opportunities to work with us. We can help you with that, but you've got to do that. And so, but only decision you need to do right now is to at least buy some SPOCK for yourself, for your family, just as an experiment. Just use your lunch money, whatever. And I've seen how this is very effective. Once you've got that in your wallet and you start seeing, what happened today? And then you become more interested, more engaged. You say, well, what other cryptos are out there? And be forewarned, though, 99 out of 100 of these are scam. That's not a made up number. That is 99%. And maybe it's changed in the last, I've been saying that for a month. Maybe it's changed in the last month. I don't know. But the last month, and prior history, it was getting up to be like 99% of the projects on Pump Fund would only last a day, right? So we're into 2 months here. We're well into it, and we have the liquidity pool. I have the largest pool, the largest holder of SPOCK in the whole on the whole cap table is locked. It's locked in liquidity. It's locked in a stream flow contract. It's public record. Those funds are locked for 2 years, which is unheard of. Most of these projects are gone in days, in a day, literally in a day. So this, you've got to kind of really don't think about this. If you're talking to the crypto aficionados out there, you've got to change your thinking too, because this is not following the pattern that you're accustomed to. It's not like, okay, I've 10x my money, I'm out of here. You could do that, yeah. You can do that, but maybe it's not right for you, and but it's going to be picked up by one of these true whales, and these true whales, they often don't sell ever. Like a good asset that's performing, it just becomes part of their estate, and it's part of their legacy, ongoing, right? So it's very nice to have a base. They'll be building a base, which we are doing, of those people that, even if they can only put in a limited amount per month, each month we are seeing that's increased. We had one person, their first transaction, they weren't even allowed to do $300. And and this was, I don't want to say the name because I'm not 100% sure, but it was not a bank, it was one of the crypto intermediaries, locked the funds for 7 days because it was I don't know, tripped some flag in their system. It was a newbie, and who had a Coinbase account, for years or more, but hadn't used it because they didn't have a reason to. They weren't enthusiastic. It said no over and over and over to every crypto that they'd seen, but because they knew me, they and know that I own a bank, perhaps I've seen that apparently does have a bearing for the reasons that we said before, that I am not going to put my name on something that I know is not legitimate, incredible. They put in a significant amount, but it was locked for 5 business days. And finally that was unlocked, and then those funds came through. So we've got all kinds of funds like that will be unlocked and coming in. And also, though, we see that they raise the limits get raised. Also, people learn new way, like ACH from directly from your bank into Coinbase is one way to do it. And also, I'm building in for the July 24th launch. BROK, part of BROK's function is going to be onboarding assistance. So you may not even have to interact with a wallet to the degree that you have had to before. And the onboarding will be minimalized. Yeah, I never finished the story about the loan product that I developed. That was the core point was I actually had this poster, and it was this big poster, and I put in fine print, I put all of the pages of this loan agreement on this poster. And then I had distilled the loan application, because based on the data, I knew what mattered, down to this little, small postcard size almost set of questions. And so I had big X's over all the rest, and I had circled this in green. I said, if this is what your loan application looks like, get this loan product, because this is our loan application. It was a very successful project and a very successful product. And so a lot of banks have become, and other lenders too, have become addicted to just gathering more and more and more and more information. And it's extraneous. It's not actually necessary when you really pare it down. And then, wow, you're just going to we're going to kick everybody's asses because it's going to be so much easier to onboard people to fund their accounts, to get loans, to lend money out, to find better yields that are appropriate to your position in life, and using because the Ingram evaluation matrix, that the 4 categories: strategic fit, feasibility, financial impact, and risk. That first one, strategic fit, looks at who you are as an entity, whether it's an individual or an organization. If it's an organization, it's the personality of the organization, is the culture, and the core values. That's the culture. If it's an individual entity, then that's their personality. Same thing though. What are their goals? So we have, as I hope you can see, all the basics. I wouldn't even say. I would say the basic makes it sound less than. It's sophisticated. We have the most sophisticated, elegant solution to banking in the last 95 years, using technology the way it could be used, starting with a blank slate instead of trying to patch technology onto old systems that are obsolete. Everything here has been created with a blank slate, and we don't automatically assume that it can or can't be done because of regulations, because there's different layers of regulations as well, right? There are there's core law, then there's laws, there's rules, there's policies, there's procedures, there's guidance. There's a whole spectrum. It's not just black and white. One thing's lawful and another thing isn't. There's a lot of nuance there that and so it's a mistake. It's to build everything. Maybe not always, but at this moment in time, we have the luxury, let's say, to be able to build something smart and build it for utility, the whole thing, the whole system, all aspects of the system for utility first, and then ensure that it meets all of the regulatory criteria. And you know what? Regulations can change. We have seen that. We've seen whole agencies that have disappeared. Go back to 1943. Today banks are regulated by, depending on how you count, 5 agencies. In 1943, there was one agency introduced called the OCC, the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency, and the National Banking Act and the National Currency Act. And that was the one system, one regulator for all banks. So, and each new law that we add, each new act has only gotten longer and more complicated and has gotten crazy. And that insanity needs to stop. And that is our mission and purpose, is to create a system. Why? Because the core of freedom is private property. And if your money isn't safe, if it's not private, if anybody can come in and confiscate it at any time, if it is, if you can't spend your money on what you want to spend it on, within, I would take that quite a long ways. Actually, it is your money. I mean, you could theoretically bury it in your yard, right, and do it. That's not very efficient, but with crypto, you can do that. You could bury, you could memorize your number and memorize it. And like those people in Iran, even if they lost their keys, if they had their wallet memorized, they could go to a different country and have all of their assets available to them anywhere in the world, just by having memorized their seed phrase and their private key. So that's hard, and you could write it down, and a piece of paper isn't that, or you could etch it on a piece of titanium like I have. That is all relatively easy compared to carrying around chests full of gold, right? That was the whole reason that banking was invented by the Templars in the Middle Ages, was to provide a means for travelers and for pilgrims, affluent pilgrims in particular, to travel without having to carry all the assets that they would need for their journey with them on their person and get mugged. So that was actually the genesis of banking, and it was totally private. You had warrior monks who were sworn to privacy and secrecy, protecting your assets in their fortresses in some cases. So that's the ethos that I hold to. So with that, live long and prosper. Share your comments, like, subscribe on Substack, and wherever you are listening from today. Hopefully today it worked, where we went out to some new platforms, not just X and YouTube, but I think this may, if everything worked, we were on some other platforms as well today. So please comment, and questions, always welcome. That helps to may inform the direction of the next POCK Talk, which is every second day at 6 p.m. Live long and prosper.